What it do, homies? It's your boy David. I'm back today. We out here with a donation request. This time we checking out 10 most violent wrestlers ever. Let's go ahead and shut up and turn it up.
Violence is never the answer, but in some cases it's extremely necessary. While wrestling can take on many forms like taut family drama, a sporting game of one-upsmanship between two esteemed athletes, or whatever the hell all the ants were on about in Chikara, at the root of it all is violence, and some practitioners and federations have taken this core value and dialed it up to 11. Whether it's the
That's an understatement, man. See, I was born in 1990. Right. So, you know, one of the golden eras of wrestling because it was the Attitude Era. And talk about violence. Oh, my goodness, man. It was some hardcore stuff. People getting slammed on nails, but I'm pretty sure they're going to talk about it here.
Brute physical force of monsters like Vader and Stan Hansen punching people so hard their souls exploded, Undertaker and Kane setting people on fire and being ghouls, or the ultra-violence from companies like CZW, Big Japan, ECW, and FMW.
So I wouldn't necessarily call myself like the biggest fan of wrestling, right? I did watch some of the other ones, like it was you know, I was pretty much an average consumer, right? SmackDown, Raw, ECW, but some of this other stuff I didn't watch. I know there's some super fans that watch many of the other ones as well.
Violence in wrestling is just something you can't turn away from, no matter how much you may want to. But before we start, it's important to note that we are highlighting violent wrestling personas rather than wrestlers who are horrible bullying bastards outside the ring. As in a lot of cases, the most extreme wrestlers are some of the friendliest in real life. There are exceptions, of course.
Definitely.
I'm Adam Pacitti from Cultaholic Wrestling, and these are the 10 most violent wrestlers ever. Join us. Number 10, Terry Funk. In an industry where the term legend gets bandied about a bit too easily, Terry Funk is one of the few wrestlers who has truly earned the title. A former NWA World Heavyweight Champion, Terry's work in the 70s with Brother Dory opened roads into Japan for many Gaijin wrestlers, while their time as the villainous Funk Brothers in the NWA made them two of the most hated wrestlers of the time. Terry in particular pushed the boundaries to places they had seldom been before. He once tried to remove Jerry Lawler's eye in an empty arena match, attempted to suffocate Ric Flair with a plastic bag, never mind the fact that he was so hated he has been legitimately stabbed and shot at by fans on at least a couple of occasions.
Oh my goodness. Now, obviously, most of this type of stuff is scripted, you know what I mean, as far as being hated. You know, but man, I mean, that just goes to show you just how much, you know, wrestling, because you know, I knew from a kid that wrestling wasn't real. You know, I couldn't understand how some of these type of violent acts could be sanctioned and approved. You know, this was before I started watching like MMA and everything, so I knew it had to be scripted. And of course, most of the physical stuff that I was watching, you know, I knew that to be real. Like the physical, like I don't know how you could fake being suplexed from the top of a turnbuckle. I always knew that there was some pain involved in that and everything. But this speaks volume to the writing, right? For you to just really, really hate somebody down to your soul to where you're willing to inflict bodily harm. Like, that's crazy.
That is enough for any career, but this was merely the first half of Funk's. He later helped put ultra-violent hardcore wrestling on the map with his work in the legendary King of the Deathmatch tournament and his wince-inducing barbed wire no-rope death matches in ECW, the latter of which sowed the seeds for Paul Heyman's Philadelphia-based promotion to grow into a monster. And if throwing hundreds of chairs at his opponents didn't work, Funker would just try to set them on fire or brand them instead.
That's crazy.
Middle-aged and crazy was an understatement. Number 9, John Zand.
To be some, you know, I always thought that it was, I mean, was there an age in wrestling where, you know, modern wrestling, I guess modern, where it wasn't scripted, where you just got together and you just did whatever? Because that fire, that branding, that's crazy. That's real fire and everything. That could be permanent. That's crazy. I know some wrestlers come away with permanent injuries from like maybe stunts that pretty much go wrong and everything. I mean, we've seen it. You know, some have unfortunately lost their lives because of these stunts and everything. But yeah, I don't think I've ever seen somebody trying to put somebody on fire in the Attitude Era. I could be wrong. There's a lot of source out there.
Dig. John Zandig is a divisive figure. To some, he is merely a glorified backyarder who promoted dangerous wrestling with little regard for his performers' safety, while to others, he carried on the legacy of Paul Heyman's ECW, upping the ante and providing a true alternative to the mainstream for American wrestling fans. Whatever side of the fence you sit on, you can't deny Zandig's success, turning CZW from training school into overnight deathmatch sensation with his massive incoherent self front and center. While contemporaries like Necro Butcher and Nick Mondo are arguably more notorious, Zandig takes their place on this list for the fact that he was CZW's heart and soul for many years, and for just how crazy his matches were, usually with him dishing out the most extreme violence. Zandig was happy to take it as well, whether getting dragged behind a car, hung from meat hooks, or with light tube after light tube after light tube. But we can't—
Did he just say hung from meat hooks?
Gloss over the ridiculous beatings he handed out. There was the time he launched Jun Kasai off a truck onto concrete, or the time he mother effing bombed Joey Janela off a building through a flaming truck and nearly killed him. Yes, that actually happened. Jesus! Number 8, Mick Foley.
I don't know. I'm sitting here thinking, like, surely I've seen some of these stunts in the Attitude Era, right? That's the only thing I have to reference because I was young. Surely I've seen these type of things before, but for some reason, I am just even more shocked and awed right now that the concrete, I still can't get over the meat hooks.
Everywhere he wrestled, Mick Foley turned heads for his boundary pushing. His brawls with Vader in WCW were so violent that he lost an ear.
Yeah,
his performance in the King of the Deathmatch tournament cemented his legacy, while his work in ECW served as a precursor to the storylines and mic work that would make him a legend in WWE. A savage, one-eared force of nature, Foley's performances earned him derision as a glorified stuntman from the likes of Ric Flair, while on the other hand, he influenced an entire generation of wrestlers as he put his body on the line time and time again. Unlike others on this list, Foley's intense violence wasn't just physical, as his work as Mankind was some of the most disturbing and barbaric storytelling ever told on WWE TV. From the brutal attack on Jim Ross during an interview segment, the promos from the Boiler Room, or the way he would sit and squeal as he ripped out his own hair, Mankind was genuinely disturbing. Throw in the fact that he introduced thumbtacks to WWE and—
Oh, I didn't know he introduced that. You know, honestly, as a kid, I could not understand Mankind's character. I didn't know what to think of. He kind of just, in my head, he kind of was just came off as this amorphous blob with no identity. Maybe that's the point.
Genuinely disturbing. Throw in the fact that he introduced thumbtacks to WWE and was prone to delivering and receiving bouts of extreme physical aggression in the ring, and you have arguably the most violent wrestler WWE has ever seen. Number 7.
And what's even crazy is that, you know, I don't know how many injuries he has received throughout his entire career, but if you look at him now, at least the last time I saw him, looks wonderful for somebody that's going through that much punishment, you know what I mean?
Jun Kasai. Take a look at Jun Kasai. Looks like a nice, mild-mannered fella, doesn't he? He certainly makes an impression with his weird white eyes, 3 teeth, and a network of scars that make Sabu and Hayabusa look like wimps, while usually holding some kind of big knife in his hand, by the way. Given the nickname Crazy Monkey, Kasai is just that, as you never know whether he's going to be playful and weird, or whether he'll start screaming and hurling his own poo at people. Regardless, in either scenario, you can guarantee that he will be bleeding. A lot. A mainstay of Big Japan Pro Wrestling and Combat Zone Wrestling, Kasai's matches are not for the faint of heart. His work regularly involves razor blades, light tubes, barbed wire, and even cacti as weapons, and he once got cut so deep by a light tube in a CZW bout that it exposed the bone in his arm. Kasai matches really are a sight to behold. But he's no mere backyard garbage wrestler. Kasai can go in the ring as seen in his work with 0-1. He can also bring joviality into his matches, wrestling comedy bouts in promotions like DDT Pro, and has even competed in Joshi Federation Ice Ribbon. That said, still wouldn't cross him even on a good day though. He looks like he would eat you.
my dad used to work at, a long time ago, he used to work at a Hertz company, which is a car rental. And every now and then, often actually, he would see wrestlers that would come in, to rent cars and everything. And one of the things that he told me was just sometimes you kind of hear that, you hear and you see kind of like a contrast between the character that they act on in stage and who they are in real person. He told me, back then we were thinking Undertaker was like this, this bad A dude who didn't give crap. My dad said he met him. He was just like, hey, how's it going? Like kind of like one of the nicest people you met. And of course they are, I'll say, of course, you never know. But I found that interesting. I'm wondering about this guy, Jun Kasai. Like, what is he actually like, in person when the cameras are out and everything goes behind? Like, oh my goodness, but that's one of the craziest things I ever done, man. I need to go drink some tea. You know what I mean? Like, this is crazy stuff.
Toshiaki Kawada. Violent wrestling isn't all about light tubes, thumbtacks, and weed whackers. At its core, it's all about smacking someone in the face as hard as you can. Arguably, nobody has ever done this better than Toshiaki Kawada. One of the four pillars of heaven of 90s All Japan, Kawada was famed for being stiffer than Eric Bischoff after a blue chew, and for his love of booting people in the head like they were footballs. Kawada was so violent and tough that his displays earned him the nickname Dangerous K, and even hard-hitting nutters like Minoru Suzuki and Katsuyori Shibata ended up on the wrong side of Kawada's strikes. He wasn't just some one-trick martial arts kicking pony though. Kawada was a hell of a wrestler, with his All Japan work regarded as some of the greatest wrestling matches ever, whether flying solo against the likes of rival Mitsuharu Misawa, or breaking people in half with tag partner Akira Taue as the incredibly named Holy Demon Army. The one chance you had against Kawada was hoping to outstrike him and praying he didn't get up, because if he did, this hulking no-toothed madman would kick you so hard you would soil your...
Bro, this dude literally got tree trunks for legs. Oh my goodness, the fact that he can get it up that high, yeah, that man a dangerous kicker.
Or
just from the pictures, oh my God, oh man, just from the pictures alone, this man looked dangerous.
If you really pissed him off, he would attempt to kill you with the Ganso bomb. Number 5, Bruiser Brody. Much has been said about Bruiser Brody both here and elsewhere. His popularity around the world, the fact that he was a legitimate attraction with incredible drawing power, and his wild brawls that set the stage for hardcore wrestling. Brody was a true force of nature, and if he wasn't making Japanese audiences run for their lives as he swung a giant chain over his head, then he was probably battering Abdullah the Butcher or Carlos Colon, and weeping buckets of blood in the process. But despite his no-nonsense approach to wrestling, and his brisk if not difficult nature backstage, outside of wrestling, Frank Goodish was known to be a family man first and foremost, and embarked on his many tours of the globe in order to provide for his wife and child.
Yeah, see, that kind of makes sense, kind of like the contrast, where you kind of do what you need to do to provide for the family, but when the cameras are off, you're just like this big old huge soft teddy bear. I bet you other names like Big Show, something like, kind of like the same thing, Kane, Undertaker, Goldust. Yeah, I wonder what he's like off camera. I'm pretty sure they're interviewed and something like that.
Bruiser Brody, however, was not Frank Goodish, and for all of the violent bravado and OTT nature of his matches and his persona, he was not afraid to batter an opponent for real to help boost the aura of Brody. Unfortunately, it's this blurring of fiction and reality which is believed to be a factor in Brody's murder in Puerto Rico in 1988. Number 4.
Oh, oh, snaps, he got murdered?
Believed to be a factor in
Wow. Even though everything is scripted, some of that stuff can kind of trail off, like if you don't like the way certain things are performed. Because, I imagine even though there's scripts, things don't always work out the way they're supposed to. So you got to kind of do some improv, right, to kind of drive the ratings. But the after effects of that, right? Not everybody looks at it as possibly good sportsmanship, or you just looking out for the health of the show. They take that stuff personally. That's crazy. I'm learning about some of these wrestlers for the first time here, so don't mind me.
Brody's murder in Puerto Rico in 1988. I
say that as you're watching
Number 4,
the reaction.
Nick Gage. Nick Gage does not look like your average wrestler. Balding with chipped teeth and 4-day-old stubble, he looks more like a man who would beat you with a hammer in a rough pub for £2.50 and a Nokia 3310. And that is why he's utterly terrifying. The first ever CZW World Heavyweight Champion, it says a lot about Gage's in-ring demeanor that he holds that accolade, and his matches in CZW exemplified its ultra-violent no-Fs-given attitude to deathmatch wrestling. Gage is also the only man in wrestling to have won the Deathmatch Holy Trinity, the CZW Tournament of Death, GCW Tournament of Survival, and the infamous IWA King of the Deathmatch. Like most others on this list, Gage's work is not for the faint of heart. He once got impaled on a broken light tube, almost bled to death, cut a promo while doing so, was airlifted away where he died in the helicopter, and then was resuscitated. Somehow, this wasn't the end of his career, as he was back 1 week later.
I'm gonna tell you something, man. You know, we often talk about some of these superheroes and comic books and everything, bro. Especially the punishment that most of these wrestlers do go through, like Mankind, and the fact he said he cut a promo. Oh, the durability that you gotta have. Oh my goodness, man. Impaled, almost bled to death, and they said he cut a promo later that same day. Just patch me up right here. Just so right there, I need to go. That's crazy. That's insane.
His career wasn't even ended when he spent 5 years in jail for robbing a bank, and last year he stabbed David Arquette in the neck with a light tube. I'm sorry, am I reading a wrestling script here or a rap sheet of a GTA character?
Right.
Number 3, New Jack. Take out your violent wrestlers bingo card and put a big inky dot on New Jack. Chances are before you clicked on this vid, you were expecting the original gangster to appear, and I'm expecting a flood of comments down below saying, expecting New Jack to be number 1.
Oh, that's interesting. What country is that keyboard from? I don't recognize it.
Actually, dickhead. So, yeah, New Jack. Where to start with New Jack?
I don't know anything about New Jack.
Might as well go with the greatest hits, eh? The mass transit incident, where he cut a teenager very deep in an ECW match. The Danbury Fall and aftermath, where he got brain damaged in a botched stunt and later tried to murder Vic Grimes in revenge. The baseball bat incident, where he did his best Wade Boggs impression with Gypsy Joe's head. And he also stabbed somebody 9 times in a match in Florida. And this is all from a man allegedly with a handful of justifiable homicides to his name. So where does New Jack the wrestler end and Jerome Young the man begin?
Nah, this man sound like he actually from the streets, bro. He sound like y'all done gave the wrong person the contract deal. Nah, he sound like somebody that's about that life. You know what I mean? He said, yeah. They gave him the writing and said, yeah, so you're gonna act like this one guy. He said, yeah, act. Sure.
Hard to tell, really. Years of living a hard life on the road, numerous substance abuse issues, and living the gimmick would be enough to break any wrestler, but when that gimmick is a staple gun-wielding thug who doesn't care about anyone, it must be pretty hard to switch off. Number 2, Abdullah the Butcher. Abdullah the Butcher, in his prime, was a sight to behold. Built like Jabba the Hutt and usually gushing with blood out of every pore, Abdullah was one of the founding fathers of what we know as hardcore wrestling today. His work in the 70s and 80s made wrestling more violent, more of a wild spectacle, and people could not look away. A special attraction all over the world, it was his work in Puerto Rico and Japan that made Abdullah an icon, as he routinely clashed with biggest rival Bruiser Brody and stabbed many people with forks during manic bloodbaths.
Oh my goodness.
I mean, just look at the state of his head. He's bladed so much in his career that his dome is an utter mess, with Mick Foley claiming that Big Abby can slot gambling chips into his forehead grooves. But for
Mick Foley with the roast.
For all his trailblazing, his story also has its fair share of controversy. From blading opponents with little regard, to actively wrestling and bleeding buckets while hepatitis C positive, Abdullah's legacy is a spotty one, with superstar Billy Graham absolutely fuming when Abdullah was inducted into the WWE Hall of Fame. And that's without mentioning his Chamber of Horrors match at WCW Halloween Havoc 1991. Yikes. Number 1.
Happen. Oh my goodness. It's almost like I didn't realize just how much of a lawless land wrestling used to be. Oh, it's kind of like the early days of MMA where they were just kind of like, it's funny that things start off that way, you know, kind of lawless, right? Until you actually see years and years of just bloodshed before rules are instituted or safety precautions are put in place, you know, whatever it takes for those ratings, I guess.
Atsushi Onita. Without Atsushi Onita, this
number
list
one.
would look very different
Let's see.
indeed. The founder of Frontier Martial Arts Wrestling, Onita pioneered deathmatch wrestling and for a while in the 90s turned it into a must-see money-making art form. A prodigious talent in all Japan, Onita first got a taste for wild brawls during an excursion in Texas, then became All Japan's junior ace during the junior heavyweight boom of the early 80s. Injuries forced Onita to retire in 1985, but he returned 3 years later with a chip and a barbed wire baseball bat on his shoulder.
He on some Negan vibes, or should I say Negan was on some sushi vibes.
And soon after, FMW was born. Barbed wire rope matches, exploding ring matches, wild fights on floating rings surrounded by explosives, all were cooked up by Onita, and he was usually in the thick of it, dishing it out as FMW's biggest star, as well as its mad scientist. Still, the weirdest thing about Onita's ultra-violent style of wrestling is just how popular it was, with some FMW shows drawing in excess of 30,000 spectators. All of them enamored with Onita, contemporaries like Mr. Pogo, and innovative superstars Hayabusa and Megumi Kodo. So while some of the wrestlers that came after him upped the ante in terms of visceral carnage, Onita takes top place for what he created. Often imitated, never duplicated. It takes a special type of lunatic to create such a memorable deathmatch dynasty.
Look, man, I said that this was the donation reaction, but I gotta tell you, man, this video has been highly exciting, very, very, very exciting. It's been enjoyable. So shout out, let me go ahead and subscribe. Shout out Cultaholic Wrestling. You make some good content. This was extremely exciting. And now I come down here and see 10 worst WWE matches of 2007. Oh, you got some stuff here. I might have to check out. But this was an excellent donation. I really, really enjoyed this video. You guys let me know what y'all thought about it down in the comments. If you enjoyed the video, leave a subscribe. Thank you. See you later. I forgot my tagline. Whatever. See y'all later.